Okay, we're live. This is a Soul Purpose conversation, actually episode number 19. So Jan and I here to share our what we're doing in the Soul Purpose group. We have a Soul Purpose group. A lot of people from around the world gather. And the people who are in the group are all soul-led entrepreneurs, artists, healers, coaches, who have message and the gift inside of them and wants to express that to the world. And then we help people through different awareness and subconscious work to begin establishing the energetics that they are here to experience through their belief work and the way that they can show up. Inspire action is the key because a lot of people tends to get caught into this transactional manner. So we do a lot of awareness work inside of the group to help all soul-led entrepreneurs. We call soulpreneurs to really grow their business from a spiritual perspective. So it's an integration of spiritual embodiment and business growth. So in the Soul Purpose group, we have a different sequence throughout the month, providing challenges and monthly events to energize people. A lot of people are doing things alone, and then we are a supportive container to help all entrepreneurs who we believe who needs to be leading the world to feel good about their expression. So Jan is the one who decide the topic. And do you want to share a little bit what the topic is and then why you wanted to talk about it?
Yeah, so the topic today is what we call in the community contrast. I guess we should probably define what contrast is, but essentially, the main areas that people struggle with that we often talk about is in relationships, in health, in finances, and some people in all of them at the same time, but most people sort of have one that they particularly struggle with. And what's interesting so what the contrast there is that when you encounter negative feedback from the experience, or you perceive it as negative feedback, we can get into the nuances of it in a moment, but from the perspective of the person that's doing it, either in a relationship or in a business or in their health, something happens that is unpleasant, and that normally knocks people off of the path, right? Whatever their spiritual path, whatever they were aiming towards. And so we call it contrast. And Yuki's got this wonderful definition from the very first workshop I was in about what contrast is. I think wasn't it this? No, that's the gravity. But
Yeah. What's the definition? I don't know what the definition.
That contrast has to exist because
Yeah.
if everything was like if you wouldn't know what elation feels like if you didn't know what despair feels like. You wouldn't know what happiness is if you didn't know what sadness feels like. You wouldn't notice the differences, right? Like there has to be contrast, and this can be quite challenging, I guess, to understand, because sometimes the contrast is that people die and really horrible things happen all over the place and in the world, and but what's interesting for me is a couple of years ago I read a book called The Fourth Turning, which is actually, it's more of an economics book, and it's written by it's two guys, the guys that created all the language around baby boomers and Gen Xers, and they did a lot of research on cyclical economical cycles, and that's where they came up with the boomers and the generational terminology. But they also stumbled across something which was like this cyclical, they call it turnings, right? And this thing that happens, we're in a turning at the moment, that when there is, the last turning, we went to the moon, but there was also various wars around the world. There was also sickness. There was also, so there's always like this massive expansion in technology and consciousness, but at the same time, death and destruction and wars and presidents with fingers on nuclear buttons, and and that's the contrast. That's in a grand sense, but on a personal level, right? It's, you start a business and you sign up, you create your first webinar, and you're expecting 300 people, and like 5 people arrive. You got 300 signups and like 2 or 5 people arrive, and it devastates you, right? You don't convert any into sales, and you think, oh well, what's the point, right? That's contrast.
Right. I mean, contrast, if I can just kind of nail down in the shortest term, is a perceived negativity. And it has to do with a little expectation, because if you're not expecting that perception wouldn't exist. But I think anything that appears to be lack, right? And the lack might be the thing itself, but then it's more the perception of how we're seeing it. And I cannot stress enough though, Yam, because contrast and the perception of lack exists in this 3D physical realm, just like you said, because we're living in the realm of the relative, which you need comparison and contrast. And there is going to be some opposite in our life in order to let us remind us that, the truth of who we are. And I think the life that we want to aim for is not the life with zero contrast, but the life that we can swim through as gracefully as you can through and in the midst of the contrast. What is the perspective that we choose when something is challenging is
Grateful
what we
for.
want to. Yeah, exactly. And interesting, because if I go back to the teaching of Bob Proctor or Earl Nightingale, they actually really emphasize the term attitude. And Bob says that attitude is like a cake, where it's a layer to it, right? And then he said that it's a combination of thoughts and feelings and action, depending on the attitude that you have, the thoughts that you choose, the feeling that you have about something, or the action that you take. And the quality and the type of action that you take is different in what kind of attitude you are looking at and creating based on that context is what we want to examine. And I think if we understand that we're a spiritual being and having this physical experience, the attitudes that I choose is, and this might be a kind of new language, it's a soul. The attitude needs to be soul led in order to really flow through life, because otherwise people get swallowed by that contrast. And another thing though, something that after the training that we had in the group last week, the one takeaway and the focus that I wanted to emphasize that I've been sharing in the groups, the school group, is the idea of believing is seeing, right? So people see and experience contrast, what appears to be negative in the 3D physical world, and they start believing that that is true for them. Because for most people, reality is defined through the five sensory perception, what you can see, hear, smell, taste, touch. And even people who believe in the law of attraction, and people who believe in conscious manifestation, conscious creation, and they know intellectually that what they believe becomes the manifestation and materialization, but they continue to let the outside sight, the evidence of sight, even though it's a lack, influence what they believe to be true. So it's very interesting when everything has a vibrational cause, and that's where it begins. So through imagination and through feeling in your body. And in order for people to really embody that, um, they do need to be self-reflective, right? You can say that I am a spiritual being, and the next moment you might be reacting to the lack in the outside.
You're
If
suffering.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, this is a very important topic, and we can talk about from many different angles.
Mm.
What are you experiencing watching people in the group and in your real life, as far as the angle and the topic of this contrast?
I think I think part of it is that there is such a long-standing relationship with contrast that it becomes almost like an identity point. Um, and and I think that it's easy to I think that trying to move from a logical understanding of what we're talking about into an actionable uh, uh, practice when you are riding a wave of a lifetime's worth of contrast, is challenging for people, because logically understanding it is fine, but as we it it the language that comes through quite often is um, almost the sort of type of stuff that it's this has been going on for so long. I'm a special type of broken, or uh, I'm different, or my life is different, or my problems are different, or my suffering is different, or my and I'm not saying this to trigger anyone, but like my neurodivergence, or my mental health, or my physical health, or whatever it is, is it's been going on for so long, um, and the way that the 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 evidence in my see, taste, smell, touch here, whether it's internally or externally, is strongly validating this idea that I have about myself and the world. And but I know from my own work on myself that I know what that, like, being sucked into it over and over feels like, but it's just practice. It's just practice. Like, for me, I spent a lot of time turning contrast into, like, almost like a flare that goes up, and rather than it telling me that something's wrong, or telling me that something needs to be fixed, or telling me that there's a problem or anything, all it tells me is that I am in my personality reacting to the contrast. And the only thing that needs to happen is that I have to return to the truest version of myself. It's like there's part of me that wants to get pulled into it, climb into the rabbit hole of the contrast, and try and fix and change and react and feel sad, and but I'm all of that entire experience for me is I'm getting better and better at it, like almost like a flare that gets shot off that says, like, alarm, alarm, you're going, the wrong thing is happening, you know. And I've gotten so much better at that. It's not perfect, but it's almost like I enjoy the mess of life now. I love contrast because it's an embodiment practice for me. That it's all it is.
Yeah, yeah. The first segment of what you share, what stood out for me is, yeah. So people stop reacting to the challenge in their outside, and that's actually an identity, right?
Mhm.
So seeing is believing is an identity. And okay, how can we turn that into an identity that truly embodies believing is the seen, not the other way around. I think what I see everywhere, young still, even people who are on this spiritual journey and practicing manifestation, is that they don't quite actually believe that they have the power to create from vibrationally from their imagination and assumption.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because what was coming to mind for me now, and it's tied to this, is, as you said, because they're waiting for the evidence, right?
Yes.
And then is what people have to understand is when you start to change, there's a delay, and then also there's the compound interest of, like, what you see now in your see, taste, smell, touch, hear experience is what you believed yesterday,
Yes.
right? And it's compound interest. So if I start changing my beliefs today, it's not going to miraculously change before my eyes.
Uh-huh.
You have to wait until the delay catches up, till reality catches up with your new beliefs. And that is a very, very powerful concept for me, because it allows me to not trust what I see, but trust what I believe.
Yes.
And then what's lovely about this is, and I think about this a lot, is, I think that some people are lucky in their life that they do, for whatever reason, have the evidence in what they see, smell, taste, touch, as an anchor point and as a validation of what they believe. But
Mhm.
if you are stuck in a reality that you don't like, and you start to change the way that you think and feel about it, and you're waiting for the delay to catch up, you will eventually start to experience anchors. You will start to get a taste of the new normal, right? And I
Mhm.
think that's the beautiful thing, because I'm experiencing a lot of that over the last few months, or
Mm.
year or so.
Mhm.
And that stuff. There was something I wanted to say that I can't remember on the. Yeah, it'll come to me. It'll come to me.
Mhm. I think what we want people to take away from is ultimately that you have the power to create from within, and to understand that having a perceived challenge is part of the process, right?
Mm,
And then also to not to misunderstand that great life is not a life without any challenges or contrast, right? So embracing contrast, and in the midst of the contrast, to believe your truth inside of you, but not to let the outside evidence to be true for you, because every single thing that happens in the outside belongs to the past energetics of inside of you. So if you allow the outside to cause you to feel something inside, you will be in a perpetual cycle of recreating the same thing over and over.
mm,
So free will, right? Free will to shift your attention to. That's why the practice of subjective control, chapter 12. I mean, that's the practice, right? The subjective control, chapter 12, power awareness by Neville, is a practice that we implement a lot in our group, because when something appears in the outside, most people are programmed to buy into that idea as their reality, right? They might be experiencing it, but they have the ability to change and shift by going inside. So, just like you said a moment ago, Yam, I think this practice enables people, and a lot of people are doing that through the accountability process, to use the contrast, every contrast, as an opportunity to go inwards and to solidifying and polishing and nurturing and cultivating their imagination and the energetics of their desire is probably one of the most important practice to staying in this frequency. Because and it's very interesting though. Sometimes when I do the events, Jan, like last week we did the frequency of the soul, I tend to read and listen to different topics around frequency just to kind of energize the idea a little bit more to enter into the spirit. And somewhere I heard, which I never thought this way, and I thought that it would be interesting. Like everybody knows this idea of victim mentality, right? This is making me feel this way. This happened, so I am somebody, right? So that's the victim mentality. And victim mentality is a certain timeline and frequency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when you start, so that's a life, you know, looking at life is happening to me mentality. That's a frequency, right? That's an identity. That's an assumption about life, an assumption about yourself. But when you start shifting that into life is happening through me, for me, as me, because the demonstration of your identity is self-defining, the ripple effect of what's going to happen in life, that's another different frequency. So which station are you tuning into to meet every consequence in the 3D physical world is really what we are practicing. And I cannot stress enough, like there are people who are diving in who are actually literally transforming. You know, I'm thinking of Kim. She might be the one who is transforming rapidly the last 30 days right now.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think
Yep.
underneath that, you know, I mean, I'm going to come back to what Neville talks about. I think the more we can examine our assumption of what we are actually ending up assuming, we can create a shift in the way that we relate to the contrast, right? Do you have any example? Maybe we could have some an example, right? What is an example of somebody taking that contrast, let's say personally? I mean, in the entrepreneur space, you know, you do posting, you do expression, and then people start feeling like not getting the feedback or not getting the reaction they want or not getting the outcome that they're seeking, and they start feeling the lack in that, right?
Mm.
And then the question is, what do they do, right? When they
Oh, yeah.
do the thing and they're not getting the
Well,
response of the world,
yeah, they look for a new thing, right?
exactly,
So it's never me. It's the tools. It's the system. It's the coaches. It's never me, right?
exactly.
Um, that's I mean that's the blanket of all of it. But the
That's really dangerous, actually,
hmm,
right? That people think that, oh, this is not working. You know, I sign up for this. This is not working. I I'm reading this. This book is not working, and then people start putting the responsibility of what's working, what's not working to something outside of them. When the truth is that if you step into something different and change your identity, your assumption, and belief, everything is going to change, right?
yeah. But I mean, you know, it just it feeds itself, right? Because it's I think the last thing that anybody would want to hear in that situation is that the common denominator is them. You know that it's yeah. If it's if whatever you're doing is not working, it's those things are just tools.
Mm-hmm.
right? Like your reliance shouldn't be on them to do to create the outcome.
Right.
It doesn't make sense if you think about it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The other, the wonderful thing that you said once was, before the great outcome, or whatever you want, the desired result, the depending on the, for you, how large that outcome is, there will be an equal and opposite amount of contrast before that, because it's all just energy. And I don't know much about quantum physics and all of these things, but I do know that energy in some forms moves in like a wave, right? Up and down. And even if we take it away from quantum, whatever spiritual language, and we just look at like entrepreneurial life coaching, they have concepts around the valley of despair. People start businesses and it becomes very quickly a lot harder than what they thought, and most people give up before the wave starts to go the other way. They end up in the bottom of the valley of despair. Anyone can Google it. Just Google valley of despair. You'll get 100 coaching websites talking about it. It's a big coaching concept, but that's what it is. It's you're going to encounter the contrast, whether it's how difficult it is, or that people are not showing up in what you're throwing out, or your offer is not good, or you have a problem with money, you spend too much of it, or don't have enough of it, or whatever it is, or
Mm-hmm.
it's all of that stuff is just just a recalibration of reality.
Mm-hmm. Interesting what you said about the contrast has an equal scale from what you're dealing with. This is very easy to understand though, because let's say for instance somebody is dealing with $10, right? Let's say somebody has $10. This person who has $10 and dealing with $10 will never have beyond $10 problem, because that's all the person is dealing with, right?
Mm.
So the more scale your identity and to expand how you are showing up in this world, the potentiality of the challenge also increase its size, because that's the energy that you're moving, right? If you never drive a car, you will never have a car accident, right? If you're walking all the time, you will have a different consequence. If you Right, so it's
Mm-hmm.
sort of easy to understand that equation, right? So then when something happens, instead of letting that to prevent them from moving, you want to actually acknowledge that you're expanding and you're increasing the size of the influence to the world, and we want to celebrate about it.
Yeah, exactly. You want to be grateful for it. I think it's hard though. I think in the beginning, if you're it takes. We've spoken about this particular topic that I'm going to say now. We've spoken about it a couple of talks ago, but it takes practice to wake up in the contrast. It takes, in the I told you the analogy of my watch, putting it on the other arm. It's like we have these habitual behaviors, and we have habitual responses to contrast, and it's almost comical that the more spiritual you want to become, the more opportunities you get. Like, this is more clear language to me now than ever, but the more opportunities you get to remember who you truly are, right? It's not just like ding, oh, I'm enlightened, I'm like, oh, there's so many personality experiences, and so many, and there's two things that happen there. Either you climb inside of it, and then you only wake up in the back end of it and be like, oh wow, I just had a massive personality experience, contrast experience, or you actually almost anticipate it. You see it happening. You're grateful for it. But there's an entire spectrum of responses or timing of responses in that moment of contrast. And if you can notice afterwards, that means that you can notice. You just now have to start to notice before. And most people go through this period of, they notice afterwards, they get like angry that they got swept up in it, and then some people even notice in the middle of it, even whilst they're behaving in the ways that they don't want to behave, but they're aware of it, but they can't stop themselves. And then you wake up in it, and then you try and stop yourself, and then eventually you can almost like anticipate contrast. You welcome it, right? Because the more you do life, the more you sort of participate, the more contrast you encounter. But because you're not climbing inside of it all the time, going, oh, poor me, why is this happening to me all of the time? And I really don't say this, I'm talking from experience. I'm really not saying this to trigger anyone. But if you can just go like, oh, I'm here again, how lovely. How lovely. Like, because I know from experience, from the last contrast, that there's good things that, the next good thing comes from that. And you ride it, but sometimes it's big, it's not yeah. I mean, I have a friend who wants to buy a house, and all of his monthly sort of teaching gigs have been drying up. His regular income, he's a teacher, he's a talker, really, he does gets on stages, and he has a couple of those a month, and that's his income. And now suddenly, as soon as he wants to buy a house, there's no more.
Perfect. That's because you made a decision, and the disruption is follow the intention in the process of creation. So, and I think, let's say in his example, he would probably react, what happened? Or sometimes spiritual folks think that, oh, this is a sign that I shouldn't move forward with it, right?
Yeah.
That's what I hear very often, right? Oh, the things are going wrong after I decided to do this. Maybe I shouldn't be doing it, which comes from the lack of understanding how things gets birthed in this physical form. Every single time when you decide and choose something different, something is going to go wrong, because the entanglement is being re-entangled. So something needs to be shaken off from the field. And I actually very much enjoy that. Like, when we really understand and look at life from a spiritual point of view, dimension, a lot of the things that happen, I can see from more of the profound place. And you're not really up here reacting to the challenge, but you're looking at beneath, what's happening and where this is taking you to. And it is a very joyful thing to experience without reacting to the lack in the outside, because you know exactly why it's happening. So you get excited about what's going to come next. That's what I'm focusing on whenever I come across that. And I think it takes a little bit time for people to really absorb this concept and to begin living that.
Yeah, I mean, I think another booby trap here is often the type of things that come through as well are that it's conceptually it's a type of spiritual bypassing, or that people are not compassionate, or if we talk about like global contrast, all of the horrific things that are happening globally at the moment. Why are these things happening? And I do know on some level, if I take a massive step back and I try and look at it from like an observer standpoint, there is a belief that it is all as it should be. It's very sad that that when I look at it through the personality, through the microscope, from the inertia of living life, especially if I'm going through some of those horrific things or they affect me, or even if I'm very empathetic to them or whatever it is, I don't believe that we don't have to have, like, there's layers of consciousness, there's layers of experiencing, there's layers of perception, there's layers of, and definitely on one of those layers there needs to be compassion and understand, like, and a true witnessing of what's going on, right? It's not about, but also somewhere within me there's an understanding that, like, there was wars 100 years ago, there was wars 500 years ago, there was, life goes on, like, it's, and I don't say that flippantly, I'm just saying that, my lifetime, my moment, the time that I'm here, it's a speck of dust in the grand scheme of things. And whilst I'm experiencing that speck of dust, yes, I want to have compassion and kindness towards the people that are suffering and struggling, and but again, it's like, I don't need to let it drown me.
Yeah, I think where you're coming from and the perspective that you're choosing, and to to understand that everything is happening in a way that is guiding all of us, right? And in that process, we have a free will to choose to show up differently. Um, I do feel and know that there is divine guidance, that we're being guided, that most of us don't understand or comprehend intellectually. Like,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, everything that I have gone through in my life, living in 3 different continents, I have been definitely divinely guided, right? None of those experience, without them, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing the way that I'm doing. So,
Mm-hmm.
but then I wasn't planning intellectually to do that, right? So that's, I feel like I'm divinely guided. But then in that, I have made choices of, I had a nudge to do something, to show up something, to shift something. And it's interesting to watch, trusting that process and knowing that that's the underlying intention. That is the underlying intention, and then I'm able to co-participate in that. um it's very good. It's very soothing to live life from the spiritual point of view, and I think I would love for as many people as possible to understand this point of view, so they don't repeat the survival, you know the wheel that they are accustomed to. Because, like you said, Jan, the relationship that we have with contrast, and people contracting and people resisting against contrast, is an identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Identity based on the lack of awareness, per se.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting that in, said horrific situations,
Mhm.
you find people that, maybe not situationally, but definitely in their way that they experience, in their viewpoint, they're thriving.
Mhm.
I mean, there's books that are written, many books of people in concentration camps and all sorts of horrific, and they end up writing these very impressive survival books. And I call it a survival book because that's the class of it, but it's really not them. It's not how they survived; it's how they thrived.
Mhm.
It's just a perspective. But it's, yeah. I mean, it it's down to every single person to make a choice whether or not to believe this, to live like this, to try and understand it or experiment with it. Because I think that there's maybe different interpretations of empathy. There's like a personality level empathy, and there's a soul led empathy, and the personality level empathy is like, you know, who am I if I'm not feeling the pain of the world?
Mm.
You know, and the soul-led empathy is more of a witness, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, and it just if you believe that you have to suffer, then you will suffer. And again, it's like I tiptoe around this because I know that it's a very, very triggering concept for people, especially because of the times that we live in at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's there's more than enough evidence in the world to suffer. You know, if you choose to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is astonishing to watch though when people saying this in a most loving way, when people defend themselves where they're at and when they believe that it's a situational thing, it's astonishing to see how much they actually are not seeing what they're choosing. So they have this underlying assumption that it got thrown at them and I didn't have any choice over it, right? And the the perception of I got thrown all these contrasts or lack or challenges is actually a perception. So yeah, I found that when I speak with people who are in that frequency timeline, they don't see the option or possibility that they could have actually chosen
Mm,
something. And it's very interesting. I don't know why they cannot see, um,
mm,
but I think we all have that element somewhat at some degrees. Like all of us have, oh, I could have seen this from this angle, but I ended up choosing to see it this way because of the timeline and the frequency that I'm currently living. It just happens naturally because that's the underlying assumption. And I think that's why, you know, coaches are good because you get asked question from somebody else to be able to re-examine what the belief is and where we're coming from. And I think that's very important in order to get out of that, self-limiting cage per se, that they don't know what they don't know.
I don't know what they don't know. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, there's so much to the contrast, you know, but I think the most important takeaway here for anybody um, is is the free will to try and look at it differently,
Hmm.
to understand that it's it's going to take a bit of time to develop that muscle.
Hmm.
Um, to get to a point where you are happy to experience it,
Hmm.
and then even if you get to that point that there may still be a delay before you get to your first anchor point in the new normal,
Hmm.
right? Because that's been my experience of it. You know, I'm not talking about this stuff theoretically. I'm talking about a year, if not longer, of maybe longer unconsciously doing it, but at least a year's worth of consciously doing this, rewiring myself to become, used to contrast. To, I mean, the things that I've learned in our community for myself, ranging from completely dismantling that inner critic, that horrible little voice in my head that I had a couple of years ago, that was cynical and distrusting and very hyper vigilant and angry and only had horrible things to say about me, in my mind, doesn't exist anymore. And the top level of that is that when I receive a compliment from someone, I don't cringe away from it, or I don't,
Hmm.
I believe them. I can look at myself in the mirror and smile. I can make eye contact with myself for a long time. I can, there's so many things, but the contrast has been definitely one of the greatest ones. Is is to step into it like willingly. The last thing I'll say, Yuki, is a couple of months ago, like I made a decision that I was going to. I saw a Jim Rohn video where he was basically talking about his format of his manifestation practice, but he was like, all he basically says is just go and sit somewhere in silence, right? And then but the prompt that he was giving was take a piece of paper and write down every possible way that you think that you can make money, and don't just keep it within what you think you're good at. He's like, just like let it like freely move through you, even things that you never ever thought you could do. I never went through that process, but what I did in my mind was I unlocked myself to any opportunity, not just being a nutrition coach, not just being a movement coach. I just said, like, whatever comes. Before the thing that is unfolding for me now came, I started to lose my entire business. The contrast just came. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't even know what I was being given, what was happening. There was nothing on the horizon, but the contrast was washing in like a tide, a high tide, And that whole experience for me was, I just knew that it was an opportunity for me to just practice these things that we've spoken about.
I want to highlight before we end something that you share a little bit, because I think everybody's interested in. You said that you used to have this personality or an experience of inner critic, talking to yourself about negatively about yourself.
Yeah.
And then you said you don't have that anymore. What shifted? Or people would probably want to know, what did you do? What did you do to make those disappear inside of you?
Yeah, it was the things that I said that I can do now, right? I spent time. I never used to be able to look at myself in the mirror. I hated it. I never used to be able to sit with myself. I definitely never used to be able to do breath work because it would bring all of the horrible things to the surface. I never used to be able to give myself a compliment, never mind take a compliment from someone else. So I started doing those things, and I started putting myself in situations and opportunities and on a regular basis, when I would speak badly to myself or be cynical about the people around me or be cynical about the situation, to rewire it and use things like affirmations, that everything is happening in my favor. I don't need to know why. The why is none of my business. Just constantly it's finding something simple to replace all of that stuff with. The mirror was a really interesting one for me because, it started with a bathroom mirror, but now it's like when I'm driving the car, if I catch myself in the rearview mirror, I'm always like, hey, like I've always got like something nice to think about myself, or it's Yuki, I can talk about this for days because there's certain things that it's just the way my brain works. Is I build these interesting frameworks, and one of them was, for instance, and I think I've mentioned this before on these calls, but I would every single Sunday I've got friends of mine. They've got 2 kids. They phone me on a Saturday night. They say, "Are we seeing you for breakfast?" Because they go just around the corner from my house. There's like a family kids friendly restaurant that does nice breakfast. Are we going to see you tomorrow? I can walk there from here, and I go and I get there. The kids love me. The little kid runs up and calls me uncle, and the whole thing. And it's a very loving experience. But a couple of years ago, I would experience that, and then I would come home, and a few hours later, I'd be sitting on the couch, and that little voice comes in and goes, "I'm lonely," or "Nobody loves me," or whatever it is. And then I wake up in that experience, and I'm like, but that's not true. Right. And then so what I started to do was so now I was at the doorway of a different decision, but then in that moment I was like, I would summon the way that I felt when I was with the people. That's the one part. But then when I was with them the next time, I would wake up consciously in the good experience, not just subconsciously experience it, take like an energetic snapshot of it, put it in my pocket. And then every time I felt a negative emotion, I could summon it, which then became the framework for manifestation for me in any sort of sense, right? If I can close my eyes and imagine an idea and back it up with significant feeling, and whilst I'm there, take an energetic snapshot of it and put it in my pocket. Now it's like I'm always holding it. I'm always holding it. I can summon it. It's almost basically on autopilot summoning, right? And so building that repetitions, constantly moving through the world, taking energetic snapshots of experiences that I want to experience more, being grateful for them, telling the universe this is what I want more of, right? Little things, Yuki, it's silly stuff. Like when I came back from Sweden, I live in South Africa, there's a lot of crime, there's a lot of drug addicts, there's a lot of people in the intersections begging for money and whatever. And I used to be fearful of them. I didn't want to interact with them, which is bizarre because I used to be one of them. I used to be a drug addict. But, living in Sweden, there's none of that. And coming back, it was a big contrast for me. And then I just realized, I was like, I've been given the most wonderful opportunity to play around with the energetics of money, right? So now, like I never used to have cash on me. Now I specifically draw money to give to people. And when I run out of money to give, I really think to myself, like, I wish I could give more. I tell the universe, I want to be able to give more, right? It's just these little changes in the way that I interact with my reality that has changed me. Well, I've changed dramatically inside, and it hasn't changed me. The experience has changed because I've changed.
Yeah.
The objects in reality are the same. The people are the same. The people that used to bother me are the same. Like they're the same people.
Yeah.
But they don't bother me anymore. Like the it's all changed because of just, if I had to map it out for someone, you start with, you need to learn how to wake up, like in any given situation, good or bad. You need to wake up. And then from there, you need to be able to make a different, choose a different path. And you need to get better and better and better at that.
Yeah.
And then naturally, you will build your own framework around it. For me, it was this energetic snapshots, this concept that I hold very dearly.
Yeah. Good. I mean, what you just said is basically saying that take this information and begin practicing on a day-to-day basis, right? And to self-examine and self-reflect what is happening inside of you, so you become aware the option of changing and choosing something different at each moment. So that's great.
You can't do anything unless you wake up, though. You can't do, if you climb down the rabbit hole of contrast, or even the rabbit hole of pleasure, you're just reacting to life. You're not creating it.
Yeah.
You're subconsciously creating it and then reacting to what you're creating because you created something negative.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. We have a lot of all these conversations around contrast and subconscious and the mind and energetics in the Soul Purpose group. So if you are soul-led entrepreneurs who feel strongly called to awaken the world and wants to grow the business, what we do is an integration of spiritual embodiment and business and financial growth. And it's very interesting because I feel, more than ever that combination of two is what we actually came here. Every single one of us, no matter, what age the person is, I feel that every single person is an artist of the soul and there's something to give. And there might be, scale in the ability that you want to operate in the world. And an entrepreneur, it's not a language that anybody needs to be fearful. But if you have a gift to share to the world, and if that's going to benefit for somebody, and if you want to show up in a way that you want to express what you lived, the story of you, you're a soulpreneur, right? And the scope might be, you just want to monetize a little bit, or you want to go bold and big. That's, an individual option. But we're here to really help everybody sing their song out loud without any hesitation. And I cannot feel any other way that I feel myself called to uh, what I'm doing here in the school group. So if anybody who is watching, listening, identify yourself with this new definition of soul-led entrepreneur, I'm gonna post the link to join the Soul Purpose School group, and we have different practices, events, and challenges, and people are gathering from all over the world. So join us. It'll be very fun, even more so in 2026.
I love this. Before you go, I love this language of that you said. We help you to sing your song without hesitation. I love that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What is there to hesitate, right? I think people hesitate a little bit because people wants to be accepted and liked and acknowledged, and they want to avoid basically contrast, right? The lack of acknowledgement. So awesome. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And we'll see everybody next one, which is going to be a very special one. Next one is episode 20. So see you very soon.